Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of Browns Live. I'm Aditi Kinkhabwala. I'm here with Nathan Zegura. And Nathan, why is it so hot again?
I don't know. I'd like it to be a little bit cooler here, especially, and I'm sure the players do as well, back in pads again today. But it's a hot one out here at the Cross Country Mortgage campus.
And I will say this, though. It is actually good preparation for Friday night, which is our first game. Finally, a preseason game down in Jacksonville. So it does make sense. And at least we don't have these midges or the bugs that were biting me in Canton.
No, they're on the other side of the field because when I was doing Browns Daily over there in that tent, they were all over us. So
right.
I'm happy. We're on the right side of things for that.
Stay back. We've got some good news today. Wide receivers David Bell, Anthony Schwartz are indeed back on the field. So is Javon Wims. This is really good. We need to see some more of these young receivers, have them get some reps, and it's especially good since the young Mike Woods II, unfortunately, hurt his hamstring yesterday, and head coach Kevin Stefanski told us that he will miss, quote-unquote, some time. This, of course, is the hamstring that limited him in the spring. He's been having a tremendous camp, though, Nathan.
Yeah, he's been having a great camp, and, he's a guy, as you mentioned, had that hamstring issue in the spring, didn't really participate in the OTAs, was able to get out in mini camp, made an impression, and really, if you were to talk to Greg Newsome and some of the DBs, he was kind of the toughest cover outside of, obviously, Amari and DPJ, but of the young receivers had made a huge impression and was somebody that had a lot of excitement going in the building. So this is, unfortunately, a big setback.
And also a big talker. Greg Newsome did tell me that earlier today, that he loves the way Mike Woods trash talks. On the other side of the ball, Greedy Williams is back on the field and participating in team drills. Anthony Walker also is back, which really helps that linebacker core, although he is only doing individuals. Unfortunately, we did see Alex Wright leave the field a little while ago with a trainer, but he seemed to be walking fine. He did not need any support, so hopefully that was just precautionary. And, of course, Amari Cooper and Myles Garrett appear to be getting Veterans Days off. No Veterans Days off for us, though.
No, none for us. But, yeah, Amari Cooper. And so when you think about that, Bell and Schwartz are back, but they're only participating in individual drills. Still not a lot of receivers for Chad O'Shea to go through these team drills with. And you mentioned Alex Wright goes in, Myles being off. So initially we were looking, and Wright was starting opposite Clowney in that spot. Right. Now Chase Winovich has kind of filled into that role with Stephen Weatherly going on the IR yesterday.
Although there is a new player on the field who has a connection to Myles Garrett, you tell me. Of course, the Browns just signed Chris Odom, who spent time with the Packers, with Washington on the Falcons practice squad, and he is fresh off of being named the USFL Defensive Player of the Year. He had 12.5 sacks in 10 games. And what's so interesting about this, Nathan, is that I was actually just yesterday with Warren Moon, who started his career in the CFL, with Steve Young, who started his career in the USFL, and they were talking about how valuable these spring leagues are in giving guys opportunities to come into the NFL. So this might be a diamond in the rough for Andrew Berry.
Yeah, the Browns hope to find those kind of diamonds in the rough. And you're right, he was last in the NFL in 2019, then goes to the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL, and then was in the USFL where you said MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, And so he's a guy who's going to come in, the connection to Myles Garrett. They went to the same high school, Martin High School in Arlington, Texas. So they were teammates back then and teammates now. He will wear number 61 for the Browns. And I think of those spring leagues, and I think of Dearness Johnson, one of my favorite guys on the team, who was on fishing boats and hit up every GM in the AAF till they finally gave him a tryout, and then goes on to be the leading rusher for Steve Spurrier and gets to the Browns, and, well, the rest is history.
Who actually made an unbelievably dynamic catch when when Josh Dobbs was throwing the running backs earlier right in front of me and set the fans ablaze. So now we are in a special teams drill, but we are talking about the defensive linemen because today that is exactly what we're going to get into, or at least later on in the show, we will break down this defensive line. Obviously, you see Myles Garrett hanging out with – is he talking? Do you think he's talking right there?
Oh, he's definitely talking. It looks like he's talking to Roderick Perry right there, the young defensive tackle out of Illinois. And now maybe he's just strolling around. Earlier today, he was playing catch with the fans over there. He loves to do that before the training camp practices. And today, since he wasn't practicing, throwing it around. But it's good to see him. And then 78 Jack Conklin. That's what keeps making me happy, Aditi, that we get to see him. We haven't seen him in practice yet, but he's off that PUP list and continues to work hard. And the Browns are very excited to get their two-time All-Pro right tackle back.
And I think this is another piece to mention. Kevin Stefanski once again mentioned this today. It was obviously today in reference to David Bell and Anthony Schwartz, but this Browns regime does indeed have its players that are not practicing still around. They're on the field.
Oh, yeah.
They're in meeting rooms. They're taking every single one of those mental reps. Even the veterans, Amari Cooper, Myles Garrett, are still in their position groups on the field, which is so valuable.
It is valuable, and so they go when they have a day off like that, or if it's an injured player, they'll come out, and while all the stretching and the early drills are going on, they're working their butts off. And as Joe Thomas was telling us, that's not fun. Nobody actually wants to get to do that, and they make it that way so that you're not trying to get out of practice. But then once they are done with the conditioning and the practice begins, they come and they get with their teammates over there. And so we saw Jack Conklin stand around. We see Miles as well, Sheldon Day, who we still have not seen. You can see him over there on the left side of your screen. We haven't seen him as he tries to work his way back, and I'm told that he is close to coming back as well for the Browns off that NFI list. But that's the way that they've got to do it. Be fully integrated so that when they come back, they can hit the ground running.
I'll tell you this. I'm very excited for today's show because if you ask me my biggest question about the Browns this season right now, I would say it's the interior defensive line. Is that fair?
I think it's very fair. I think it's the most unproven room on an otherwise very loaded, very proven roster. And I think you look at Sheldon Day, who's really the guy with the most experience in that room, and he's talking to Jordan Elliott, and you see Taven Bryan walking by. But Jordan Elliott's a guy we're going to talk a lot about as this show goes on, that they really need to step up this year. And so far, the early returns have been good. But you know who your ends are. You got Miles and Clowney. It's as good as it gets. You know who your 4 linebackers are. You know your corners. You know your safeties. What you don't know is what it's going to look like in the middle of this defense.
And who indeed is going to step up. But we are going to get to that. And I will say this. When I was talking about the interior defensive lineman earlier with Anthony Walker, he broke into a really big grin. So that is your tease, Browns fans.
There it is.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back with a very in-depth look at that defensive line. All right, welcome back. And Nathan, this is the magic of Browns Live. We were teased that we would break down the defensive line, but we've got some 7-on-7 drills to work through. And what did we just see number 4 Deshaun Watson do?
We saw him thread the needle over the middle of the field to Donovan Peoples-Jones for a touchdown. As we see now, Watson scrambling out, firing to the back of the end zone, incomplete for Jamarcus Bradley. And by the way, the defense would call that a win. If there's a scramble drill in a 7-on-7, they think they've won. But yeah, we're getting some good situational work. That's really a hallmark of these Kevin Stefanski practices down in the red zone, Aditi.
And that's another piece right here, Nathan. Even though there is still a fair amount of uncertainty with Deshaun Watson's situation, we do know that Judge Sue Robinson issued a ruling. The NFL has appealed that ruling. The NFLPA has responded to that appeal of the ruling, and we still wait. Kevin Stefanski has not wavered off of the plan for the quarterbacks that we have seen up until this point, and that is Deshaun Watson generally getting the first set of reps, the lion's share of reps with the first team. Jacoby Brissett getting 1 with that first team and then going on to the 2s.
Yeah, Watson's getting all the first-team reps, and they've kind of created an extra first-team rep that's been going to Jacoby Brissett there. And you saw Watson try to get out to the right side in the quick game, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah broke it up. And I know Aditi and talking to everybody here, they're excited about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and what he's going to do in this defense this year.
Very much. And in fact, I'll go back to the conversation I had with Anthony Walker earlier. He was saying you should expect to see a significant jump this year. There's just a greater understanding of the playbook. There's a greater facility. Even it was the way that Greg Newsome said that a year ago when he got out there, he was just making sure, okay, am I in the right spot? Am I lined up? And now he can actually picture every single piece of what it is that he's supposed to do. And those linebackers, they will help in that run defense. The questions that we have about that interior defensive line, and that's certainly significant. I mean, as well as the defense played a year ago, we know that the defense was top 5. We know that this year their goal is to be number 1. John Johnson has told me that.
Sure.
The top 5 is not enough. That run defense last year, I'm thinking of week 17 when Najee Harris ran to the tune of 188 yards.
That was a rough game on that Monday night for a variety of reasons. We don't need to go back into the past there, but I think the way that this defense is built, if we're being perfectly honest about it, the resources are put in their ability to get to the quarterback and their ability to stop the pass. And that's really why this was a very good pass defense last year. They're great at limiting explosive plays, but you're right. You need to have some fortitude in the middle of the defense.
Especially in the AFC North, because you do know that the Bengals can run the ball with Joe Mixon. You know the Steelers can run the ball with Najee Harris, and especially with their quarterback situation being odd. And the Ravens, well, it doesn't matter. The Ravens are going to run the ball.
That's right. No matter what you do. And so the Browns are hoping, that the guys in the middle, they thought Taven Bryan was miscast down in Jacksonville, that he can become somebody. A little tip drill and a little pick on the back.
Look at that.
Laverne Hill getting his first interception with the Browns was just added yesterday, was his first practice, joining the team in the corner room.
That's a way to say welcome, everybody, don't you think?
And look at that, Anthony Walker was the first guy in there to congratulate him off of the sideline.
Look at him celebrating. Well, this is a defense that does pride itself on splash plays like that.
Yes.
And that's all part of it. Now, the thing with Jacoby Brissett, here, of course, is that I think that Browns fans felt a week ago when it looked like it could be 6 games. Well, the way that those first 6 games played out, Jacoby Brissett just needed to sort of hold serve, keep ground steady. I don't know. Why don't you tell me right here as we wait for a second, what are your thoughts on what you've seen out of him so far?
I think he very much understands the offense. I think he takes what the defense gives him. I think that he understands his strengths as well as his limitations as he gets a nice ball right there in the back corner to Harrison Bryant on cue. Well, good job, Aditi. Way to will a positive play right there.
And I'll tell you this. Here's another piece of this. Harrison Bryant and I had a conversation earlier about the role of the tight ends, especially when Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback. And there's a sense that there will indeed be more 2 tight end sets, that you will demand more out of your tight ends then. And Harrison Bryant, did you know this? You probably did know this.
I don't know.
But did you know that he only played tight end for the first time as a senior in high school?
He was a tackle before that.
So
Nathan,
I did know that. Nobody can ever stump Nathan Zegura.
You can stump me on a lot of things. About this team, hopefully not. I hope not. It is my job.
But yes. It's funny because I did say to Harrison Bryant, I'm like, do you ever miss playing tackle? And he said, well, this is why I love to block. I don't mind getting down and dirty. And then he says, but everybody likes to catch the ball.
That's right, and I think you made a great point earlier, which is that with Jacoby Brissett under center, we're going to see an offense that has been similar to what we have seen in the past under Kevin Stefanski. 2 tight end sets, heavy ground game, heavy play-action passing game. Jacoby Brissett is a guy that is better, obviously, in play-action. He's not somebody that you're going to stand back there and throw it 50 times a game, so it'll be familiar to Browns fans. With Deshaun Watson, obviously that's when this offense can open up, but you mentioned Harrison. This is somebody I talked to T.C. McCartney, our tight ends coach, that has had a phenomenal camp and that they're going to use in the slot quite a bit this year as kind of a big slot in certain situations, and he's had a good showing early on. You see the touchdown earlier, and then Mike Harley Jr., the all-time leading receiver in the history of the U in terms of receptions, which is an unbelievable thing. Nobody would have, yes, that even when I read it, I had to double check that like 5 different times when they told me. He really kind of had 6 years, to be fair, to break Reggie Wayne's record, but nonetheless, impressive.
How do you have 6 years?
Because of COVID, and then I think he had a redshirt year, a medical redshirt year, and so he had many, many games. But he did also break Reggie Wayne's single game catch record as well. So
with
13.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that, you know what? You need guys that can indeed catch the ball. And then
That's
here, of course, is Josh Rosen, which initially felt, is this potentially a flyer that you're giving an obviously naturally talented athlete, a former first-round pick, an opportunity to come here, be a camp arm, maybe make the practice squad. But he did indeed get a chance to play with the threes earlier today and seems to be making some progress as he gets more and more comfortable with this offense.
Yeah, so the practice opened up today with 3 basically. I think they were the 2-point plays. That's what Kevin Stefanski likes to do. 1 for the ones, 1 for the twos, 1 for the threes. Rosen did get that rep with the threes and found Nakia Griffin-Stewart, the tight end, in the middle for a conversion. He throws a beautiful ball to Mike Harley Jr. Again in the back corner of the end zone.
Mike Harley Jr. making you look so good right there.
He's making himself look good, which is even better for him, right? Listen, and that's the thing we talked about. Amari's off today. David Bell's not participating in team drills. Anthony Schwartz is not. So that's 3 of your top 4 guys. Mike Woods had kind of played himself into an upper echelon role. He's not participating. So this is an opportunity to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to make the 53 if we're being realistic about it, but I want to stay in your program.
Correct.
I've got something here. Keep me here on this practice squad, and let's see what we can do. And I know Chad O'Shea has liked the way that Mike Harley Jr. has responded, and back-to-back touchdowns certainly won't hurt his cause.
I think there's an air of professionalism right now in that wide receiver room, and a lot of it really, and not that it ever wasn't before, but a lot of it stems from Amari Cooper's personality and the way that Amari Cooper does indeed set the tone.
There's no doubt. He's a guy that comes in and does his work. Workman-like guys. We're going to move into a team. Joe, we'll get to talk about our defensive line here in just a second, but I think you're right. It is a very different style of room, and again, I will say this until I'm blue in the face. Jarvis Landry, easily one of my favorite Browns I've ever been around in my 10 years with this football team. However, and good news here as we're looking at the screen. There's Alex Wright. So went in. Alex Wright is already back on the field and lined up next to Taven Bryan and Jordan Elliott in the middle.
So let's start with Taven Bryan, right?
Perfect. Let's do it.
Unless, is it time? Yes, let's go ahead and let's start with Taven Bryan. So he is a former first-round pick. Jacksonville chose him in the first round in 2018.
Yep.
And Andrew Berry picked him up on the free agency market right here. Now, the idea here is that, is this a fresh start for him? Does he get to start anew? Because in Jacksonville, he was dogged a little bit by some work ethic questions, and if he really was full go every play.
Well, the Browns went and identified him earlier. Remember, this was one of their first free agent signings. Now, it wasn't a huge monetary deal. It was a one-year deal, but the Browns were excited to get him. They thought he was miscast down there in the Jacksonville defense. They feel like he's the perfect penetrating three technique for their aggressive four-man fronts. And I actually got to interview Joel Bitonio for Browns Daily and asked him, I said, you're going against these new guys? I had a feeling you and I were going to be talking about the interior of the defensive line as Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb waste.
Everybody. That's what he does. What he does every single day.
To be fair, yes. To be fair, it does that to everybody.
To be fair, that was on the edge, so the tackles will say that wasn't our fault right there. But
correct.
They think that he is a guy who's got that quick first step. And I talked with Bitonio about it. He said, I remember playing him in Jacksonville, and a couple times he got a step ahead of me. And I said, wow, this guy's got a really quick first step. And so the key is, and I bet this kind of is what's coming from Jacksonville, he will flash. He's had a couple of sacks down here in practice already where he just kind of bullied people back in the backfield. He'll flash. The key is the consistency, but they think he has a real opportunity here to resurrect his career as that former first-round talent out of Florida.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity to talk to Perrion Winfrey, the rookie, obviously, later on. Oh.
So we saw Jordan Elliott maybe got on a little bit of a stunt there, a twist coming around, and maybe got a sack.
Okay.
Defense is calling that.
So then let's move on to Jordan Elliott.
Okay.
It's been pretty clear that we need to see more out of Jordan Elliott and out of Tommy Togiai.
Togiai. Yep.
Am I the worst person to mess up somebody's name?
No, because it happens to you all the time. I'm sure it happens to you all the time.
I know, but that's why it really matters to me. I want to make sure that I get it right.
Yeah, but I also feel like you have like in a reservoir of like they got me wrong, so like you're still like in the positive. You know what I mean? People have mispronounced your name way more than you have mispronounced anybody else's name. So you're still like way net positive.
Nathan, this is why you're such a great teammate.
Right.
In any case, these are two guys that we need to see step up.
Yeah, and Jordan Elliott is really the one. And so he bulked up this offseason, dedicated himself to his body. He's up at 320.
A one-time third-rounder in his third season who's been plagued by some inconsistency.
Plagued by a lot of inconsistency, honestly. And,
I was trying to be nice.
Well, listen, and they were not nice to him. And they said, listen, Jordan, we need you, but you need to dedicate yourself. And so he went this offseason. He got married. Actually credits his wife. Got married in March. His wife, Simone, with saying, helping him focus. And he's kind of changed his mindset. He used to want to get home, get out of here, do nothing. That's what he said. What were you doing? Nothing productive. Now he considers the Cross Country Mortgage campus his home. He said, home is actually temporary. I got to be at the facility, working on my body, watching tape. And they have noticed a big difference right now. And he is a big part of this. Because
I feel like I should make a joke about married life. In any case.
Happily married. But that he's the guy who's going to play that one tech. He's going to be the 320-pound nose tackle that eats up blocks, that allows our linebackers to run around and make plays in this run defense. So far, they're very pleased with what they've seen. He's had good camps before, but you can tell he looks different, and the key is for him to carry that into the season because last year was a career high, 464 snaps, 10 pressures, 26 tackles, all career highs. Got his first half sack against the Ravens, but he's going to be counted on, I think, to play 600, 700, 800 snaps as the main defensive tackle in this defense because the starters are gone from a year ago.
So you're calling that. He's the guy that you think will man that load.
Yes, they want him, and I think that on the other side, the 3 tech, that's more Taven Bryan, and that's Perrion Winfrey, who will join us later. But as the 1 tech, he's really the guy that has the size, that has the abilities that he does. Togiai, incredibly strong, and we'll talk about him. But
well, what does he need to do
Elliott.
in year 2? What does Togiai need to do to perhaps earn a greater share of those snaps?
I think he needs to keep getting bigger. He's a big guy. He's incredibly strong. He said that at the combine last year, most reps of 225. I think it was like 40 something, which is just mind-boggling. I was fired up. I threw it up once the other day. I was really proud of myself.
Oh, you didn't do the Nick Chubb 1,000-pound thing?
I would crumble into the ground. My body would explode, and it would be I'd be a puddle of
and I wouldn't
sadness.
have a partner.
No, you would not have a partner. That would be the end of me. But I think for him, it's just getting bigger, and he's a guy that has a lot of natural talent, but he is somewhat undersized, even though he has that strength. So he has the low man advantage. They talk about that with him, but I think it's just for him getting comfortable and taking on the power on the opposite side of the field from him. And once he can do that, they do like him. They like how quick he is. He has a very quick first step, but Elliott is the guy with the body that they want to be doing this as that 1 tech, and so hopefully he is up to the task.
So let's move out then to the – can we move out to the defensive ends? Or would you rather – okay, because I'm sort of wondering if we might see some – if the DTs don't necessarily give us everything that we want to see out of them, are we going to see maybe 3 defensive ends playing?
Yes.
Maybe even 4?
Yes, to both of those. I think certainly 3. The Browns run what they call their cheetah package, a NASCAR package it's called around the league, and that's pretty much our base nickel. Like when we're still early in the install, but as this goes on, what you're going to see is 3 defensive ends, and Clowney, Miles, Alex Wright all have the ability to line up inside. I do think in obvious passing situations, the Browns have, I know, talked about it. We haven't seen it out here yet, so I think it's coming. But I think we will see some looks where you've got maybe Miles and Alex Wright inside, Clowney and Chase Winovich outside, when it's just clearly a passing situation. And with Wright's size, they do feel like he can hold up in the ground game. Clowney's one of the best run-defending defensive ends in the league, and so is Miles. So they feel good about that, and I do think that is something absolutely that will be a part of the Browns' nickel package this year.
Besides the accolades, besides being Defensive Player of the Year, what's a way that Myles Garrett can step up his game even further? What's the challenge to Myles Garrett from the coaching staff this year?
Well, they always say, you can get better with your technique. And by the way, Chase Winovich with a nice little breakthrough that probably would have been a sack on Jacoby Brissett there, getting around Chris Hubbard. It's I think, not only, every single play, and by the way, he's great. Nitpicking on the field is pointless with Myles Garrett. He's that good, and sometimes he makes it hard to practice. And Jed Wills is a darn good left tackle. He's just that good.
Right.
I think where it's come from is the way that he's carrying himself as a leader, and we've really seen that at this camp. There seems to be a joy with Myles Garrett, interacting with the fans, interacting with his teammates, being kind of a leader. He's naturally a quiet guy. I know you've talked to him. He's a man with many diverse interests beyond the game of professional football. But I think it's just kind of taking that next step as, look, everybody who's here kind of idolizes you, right? You can make the case you're the best player on this team and certainly the best player in the league. You have the ability to make that case as a defensive player. So I think it's just kind of taking that next step where it's overarching and carries over into everything he does with this team, and I'm seeing that.
And having Clowney back again, I think the two of them as a pair a year ago, Clowney being in year 2, and that's another thing. A year ago, this was a defense that had several new faces. We talked about Anthony Walker earlier. We talked about Clowney being a new face. Year 2, what do you expect out of Clowney?
I mean, I really thought that was the number 2 issue this offseason. Number 1 was try to fix the passing game. Number 2 was get Jadeveon Clowney back.
Can we go back and read Miles' lips? What's he trying to say to Kevin right there? Seriously.
It looked like he was kind of having some fun with it as he was talking to Kevin Stefanski. But getting Clowney back was massive. And this is part of it, right? Being the leader, hanging out with the head coach, talking ball, which I'm sure they're doing and having fun doing so. But Clowney and Miles, when they were on the field last year, obviously we know they accounted for 25 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney and Miles, they had the Browns as a team, when those two were on the field, had a 35% pressure rate. That was the highest number in the NFL for any tandem, for any team at any point. So getting them back allows the Browns, when they can get people into third and long situations, obvious passing situations, to just get after them. When you think about the quality of the secondary, it just makes for a defense that's going to have an opportunity to generate a lot of big, game-changing sacks, turnovers, interceptions, etc.
Okay, so let's talk about the guys behind them, because if there is something to say about the ends in the pass rush, it is a little bit thin, maybe just because we don't know that the resumes are quite there for these other guys.
Yeah, so it starts off with drafting Alex Wright in the 3rd round, which is a guy that the Browns were very, very excited to get, and they do get him, and so he is still a work in progress. This guy was a wide receiver in high school, for crying out loud, and now is a defensive end in the NFL a few years later. They like him. Chase Winovich, who had 11 sacks in his first 2 seasons with New England, that's probably your 3 and 4. And then there's going to be a group of guys competing to either try to make this roster or to try, as we said earlier, stay in the program, stay on the practice squad here with the Browns.
All right. And so on that, we'll take another really super quick break. And I do need to remind everybody watching that Machine Gun Kelly, how about that?
Machine Gun Kelly, Cleveland's
own.
Machine
Gun Kelly, Cleveland's own Machine Gun Kelly will be playing at First Energy Stadium August 13th. Head over to Ticketmaster.com for your tickets. Are you going?
Absolutely. MGK, come on.
Did you have to buy your tickets, or were they comped?
Listen, I'm in the family. It's part of First Energy Stadium. We're in the family. We're
Not
in the nest.
for me. I don't get that. I will be heading over to Ticketmaster. I will head over to Ticketmaster.com on this break, and I hope you do too. We'll be back in just a second. And welcome back to Browns Live. Nathan, we've got a treat. It's always a treat to watch Red Zone, don't you think?
I love it. That's the scoring. That's the scoring area. That's where the game changes. That's where the teams that execute in the red zone win football games.
But I'm still seeing myself.
I know,
really like to
I was trying to look over there to see it. I know Deshaun threw a pass.
There we go. Nick Chubb and the red zone.
There we go.
2 of my favorite. Those are words that should always be in the same sentence. Red zone, Nick Chubb. And I know it doesn't always happen. And I get a little frustrated.
That's right. Well,
no offense to Kareem Hunt, but I do get a little frustrated when I don't see Nick Chubb in the red zone.
Give him the ball there, and obviously some good work here as you see Taven Bryan. We talked about him against Batonio. Alex Wright getting some work with Jed Wills. So this is some good stuff down in the red zone. A team period, which you like to see. This is as close to real football as we'll see this time of year. See Herb Miller trying to make this team as the Browns' 6th cornerback there, number 29, in a hoodie, by the way, and it's warm. Little quarterback draw on Deshaun Watson in there. Alex Wright will say, I got him. I'm not so sure.
I think it looked like he did get him.
You're going to give it to him, a little two-hand touch? All right.
I would have given that to him. I mean, in a flag football, he was gone. He would have pulled a flag.
I think you would have gotten a flag. Yeah, that's fair to say.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily love that one right there.
All right, a little quarterback draw, though, and that's what he brings to this offense in addition to his ability to throw the ball to complete 70% of his passes, all that. He is a threat with his legs, and you can spread teams out and then take advantage of that, getting him up the middle behind Nick Harris, so it's great to see back out there. He had to leave yesterday's practice after getting poked in the eye. Obviously not serious, and he's back out here today.
I will say this. I am very eager to see Nick Harris. On the one hand, we've seen the guy practice, take nearly every practice rep over the course of the last 2 years, but we all know that practice is not quite the same as playing under the lights. And
right.
Going to a somewhat hostile environment. And, I wonder during the preseason in Jacksonville on Friday, will we see a lot of silent count? Will we? And that, that's another great point to make. And Joe Thomas did make this point when we did Browns Live earlier in the week. Kevin Stefanski has made sure that all of the quarterbacks mimic Deshaun Watson's cadence.
Yep.
So when we talk about Nick Harris and we talk about this line and playing on the road, we do know that at least the quarterbacks are doing their best to keep their cadence consistent.
Right. Joe used to train the quarterbacks so that they would be consistent, so he would have that great get-off there. And you mentioned Nick Harris earlier, and he has had one start, which was Christmas Day last year in Green Bay, and did a great job in that game. But what's interesting about it is we needed Joel Bitonio to play left tackle in that game, so he's actually never played next to Joel. And Joel and I were joking about that the other day, but he said, I've practiced next to this guy more than, honestly, anybody in the last 3 years, never played next to him. And so they're both looking forward to that opportunity to get that going week 1 down there in Carolina. I am curious, though, like you are. I don't know what it's going to look like in Jacksonville. Like, are we going to see Deshaun Watson? Do you?
Oh, my expectation is that we are indeed seeing
I think
Deshaun
so as
Watson.
well.
He hasn't played in a year.
I think we'll see. I actually think we might see a lot of Deshaun Watson.
More than a series.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I do think we'll see more than a series. I'm just saying that right now. But my expectation would be after he hasn't played in a year, and Kevin Stefanski has gone on the record saying that he does want to give him as much time as he possibly can for both reasons. The fact that he hasn't played in a year, and because the Browns still don't quite know when he actually will be available to them.
Exactly right. And so then the question becomes will we see Jacoby Brissett at all in the preseason?
Well, of course, we have to see Jacoby Brissett. Well, Kevin Stefanski has to get him ready as well. It's not as if Deshaun Watson is going to play 3 games entirely.
I don't think he'd play him entirely, but I know we'll see Dobbs and we'll see Rose. But the only reason I ask this is because if we know, and again, there are some pundits and lawyers who would say that the first 6 games are now a given because the NFLPA didn't appeal. There are others that say it's possible he would play in week 1, but let's just operate on the assumption that Jacoby Brissett's your week 1 starter.
Then Jacoby Brissett has to play in the preseason.
If you could guarantee
you don't
me his
think
health,
he needs some reps?
I think he's a veteran. I just think that as being out here at camp, if we were to go into the season and something were to happen to Jacoby Brissett in the preseason, I would be very, very, very
But we can also
nervous.
look to precedent, and that's not how Kevin Stefanski operates. He does indeed give his first-team quarterback reps in the preseason. Are you thinking about this? Didn't Baker Mayfield play at all last year? I thought he
Definitely
played in the third
preseason game. Definitely not in Jacksonville.
Game.
Maybe in the third one. Yeah,
I think that
he
Baker
played.
did play in the third preseason game.
It's hard to remember these preseason. We didn't even have a preseason in 2020. That I did remember.
Yeah, that I know because, again, I was at that week 1 game, which Kevin Stefanski gets so angry at for reminding him of in 2019 in Baltimore. That very first operation when they'd never really even gone through the whole drill of calling in plays. I mean, they tried.
It was me, you, and the Ravens band, which had a lot of music to play, a lot of time to have frivolity and joy. And for me, it was a very lonely and, quite frankly, not a fun experience.
It's interesting because we sort of have taken for granted. And that was a magical season in a lot of ways for the Browns. So you think about the way that season started. It was about as desultory of an opening loss that you could have.
Tremendous
and then
words.
everybody, well, thank you. I did okay on my SATs.
I was going to say SAT words, yeah.
In any case, that Monday, the Browns returned to the building, and Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are all exactly the same. There's no throwing tables. There's no ripping up anything. This is our process. We believe in our process. We're going to stick with the process. And then what do the Browns end up doing? Having, again, we'll go back to this magical season where they end up going to the playoffs. But that year, there was none of the general camaraderie building. There was a forced building of camaraderie, where in the spring, Kevin Stefanski ended Zoom meetings asking players to talk about themselves.
Yep, the 4 H's.
Now, finally, for the first time, and then, of course, last year, there were still COVID restrictions. You couldn't necessarily sit in the cafeteria. You couldn't play pool. Now, guys are in the locker room. They're hanging out in the locker room. They are indeed playing pool. They are sitting in the cafeteria. They are joking. I actually had 2 guys tell me today that the Browns locker room is the most fun place.
They love it. And it is a big change from last year, and even for us, right? We can come here and walk around, and we can talk to the players. We can talk to the coaches. You can go on the field and speak to whomever it is that you need to speak to, whereas last year we still couldn't do that. And as you mentioned, the players couldn't get together outside of the building. It's just totally different.
You and I have both covered the National Football League for a long time. We know every successful team, the players are playing for the guys next to them.
That's right.
There is a chemistry that does indeed exist. You're not just playing for your paycheck and ending up in the Super Bowl.
No.
So to hear the Browns talk about this right now, and also, let's just be honest, the way that they have managed the quote-unquote distraction of Deshaun Watson, the way that they keep parroting what Kevin Stefanski says, you control what you control, and it's one day at a time. And to be fair, Nathan, this story keeps changing, that it's really difficult to sort of think beyond.
I'll be honest.
One day.
It's amazing to me, though, and perhaps that's what's allowed them to keep their focus. The focus is on the job to do every single day and to try to keep stacking good days together. But it is in a kind of a surreal, much as being week 1 in Baltimore in 2019 in an empty stadium for the first time in probably either of our lives. Watching a football game was very surreal. It's been surreal being here and just seeing the fact that it is very much business as usual for this football team. And you wouldn't know that there was all this tumult going around the team and around Deshaun Watson. And I think that's a testament really to this coaching staff and to these guys. And I think part of it's being able to be together in the locker room and work together the way they need to.
Oh, my.
Looks like we had, I don't know, there's a little fracas over there. Somebody got knocked down, a little fumble going for the football. Looked like Curtis Weaver was in the middle of that. Big number 59 right there, a young defensive end, again, who's been in our program for a couple of seasons and is fighting to keep that right and competing with Isaiah Thomas, number 58, our 7th-round pick in a lot of ways.
I will say that with the young players here in Berea, I'm really enjoying the physicality. I'm enjoying these are, again, it's thank goodness they're young. They are bringing the energy every day. They are indeed showing that piece of the equation. I hope that counts for something.
It does. Listen, Kevin Stefanski will tell you, if you're juiceless, you're useless. So you got to, at least at the very minimum, you got to bring us some juice here, and that's what those guys are trying to do. And one guy who I think is going to light up the preseason, if you're in preseason fantasy, John Kelly, because he's going to get a lot of carries, and he's a darn good running back, and he's the 5th running back for the Browns. That running back room is just so loaded right now. They definitely hit on Jerome Ford. I think everybody in the building feels that way already, and if you just come out and watch him, you can see that. And then we talk about Dearness,
especially catching
Kareem
the ball. I really like watching Jerome Ford catch the ball out of the backfield. I'll say that. Yes,
yeah,
very
natural.
much so. This is part of the fun of the preseason, is you get to know you get to know these guys. And there's Josh Rosen, who you were talking about earlier. We watched Josh Dobbs, and he seemed to be manning the 3rd team fairly well, and yet here is Josh Rosen. And this would be a wonderful reclamation story, too, if he can somehow. We talked about Taven Young earlier, perhaps getting a fresh start and showing something new.
Yeah.
If Josh Rosen can do the same.
One thing that I will say about this regime under Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta and Kevin Stefanski is they'll often bet on talent and take a chance on talent. So Taven Bryan was a 1st-round pick. That doesn't happen by accident in the NFL. Josh Rosen was a 10th overall pick in the 2018 draft. And while it has not worked out, he would not be redrafted there. At some point, he was considered that highly regarded as a quarterback. And so you feel like, okay, we've got a good ball of clay here. Perhaps with our coaching staff and in our system, we can bring the best out of him. And they're going to give Rosen an opportunity to turn his career around and keep a spot here in the National Football League. He looks to the back of the end zone, climbing the ladder. Zaire Mitchell-Payton, the young undrafted free agent tight end who's got some moves.
Celebration.
How about
there.
that? Yes. And Rosen's having a pretty nice day here.
You know, and again, that's another piece of this, too. Sometimes, look at how happy David Njoku is.
The Chief, it's a close tight end room. They really enjoy each other. And, this is a young man in Zaire Mitchell-Payton who undrafted, right? Didn't even really do much in college as a receiver, but T.C. McCartney said this guy just loves to come in and work, and we're seeing that pay off right there. A touchdown, even getting Brissett and Watson coming over to show him a little bit of love. Big.
You have to appreciate that, and that's exactly what Harrison Bryant was talking about, is that room feels that it can be way bigger of a collective contributor to this team this year in the way that it's being used. One last footnote on Josh Rosen. This is also the arc of life. Sometimes you're drafted in the first round and much is taken for granted.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm the number 10 overall pick. Now you've essentially been humbled to some degree, and maybe the way that you approached the game, the way that you watched film, the way that you prepared, you kind of just expected your talent to win out, and that's it. And now you suddenly realize, okay, well, in the National Football League, it's talent is a piece of it, but your mental preparation is a big part of it too. And perhaps it takes this to know that and learn that and see that.
One of the things that I know you got to talk about, you had Joe on the show with Chris Rose, as we got our preseason TV broadcast team together, is that the process is so important. And you can have all the talent in the world, but the ones who are truly great and consistently great year after year, they have a process that works for them, and they are it's almost all-consuming in a way. It is
for sure.
That's what it is. It's their lifestyle to be the best at what they do. And Joe would say, I've spent a lot of time where my whole purpose in life was to be the best left tackle I could be. And guess what? It worked out for him pretty well.
And I'll leave you with this. I keep referencing that I was in Canton and with the Hall of Famers for the last few days. Willie Lanier, who played for the Kansas City Chiefs and obviously was a brilliant middle linebacker, he said that to me, in fact, that when you are in college, it is 90% physical and 10% mental.
Yep.
He said when you get to the NFL, you flip it. That it's that much your mental approach. In any case, we're going to take a quick break here on Browns Live, and then we will be joined by Perrion Winfrey. You think he'll bark for us?
Baby, let's go. He'll bark for us. He's going to get hyped up. He's going to cut some promos. Let's go.
All right, then. We will be right back with Perrion Winfrey. Welcome back to Browns Live, where we are joined by Perrion Winfrey, who is claiming that it is not hot out here in Berea.
Cool temperatures.
you look obviously like no sweat, nothing.
Just a little water.
Just a little
well,
bit.
clearly Joel Bitonio was doing nothing to you today. No challenge.
Joel was working. I definitely say he gives me the best challenge, most definitely. I have a high respect for Joel, and he's very talented, and he's going to get me to where I need to be for the season.
I don't know that he says that you're so easy to go up against, though.
I told you, he's unpredictable. He's a wild card.
I appreciate him for saying that.
All right, before we get into the important stuff, though, you came here with a nickname, Norman Nightmare.
No, I never knew that.
Well, somebody told me that. It's in my notes. I'll show it to you.
I like it.
And so I thought we were going to have to make you up a brand new nickname. But
yeah,
you're telling me nobody ever called you? Nickname was the Norman Nightmare. Is that made up? Is that fake news?
It's made up, but that's hard.
You like it, though? It should have been.
We definitely got to come up with something new,
We need something better.
Yeah, for real.
All right, you got anything in mind?
I've been trying to think of nicknames for years.
Okay,
I feel like it's just going to come to me.
Well, if I come up with it, then can I
It got to be hard, though, because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you if it's hard.
Well, that's how it works, right?
No more.
All right, so your first camp, you're now 3 weeks in.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like it. That's the crazy part. I forgot today was Saturday.
Really?
To be honest with you, yeah.
Doesn't feel like it because it's flying? Doesn't feel like it because it's so easy?
Nah, it's definitely not easy. It just doesn't feel like it because the days are going by like that. It's like as soon as we go to sleep, I like blink, and then I'm up for the next day. Like it feels like we're not getting no rest for real, but I like it.
Well, what's the sort of most difficult part of the transition from college to the NFL?
I say the most difficult part is probably like to just the not thinking part and starting to learn the plays fast so that you're not thinking and then you're just starting to play faster and react faster instead of thinking about what the play call is. But it's starting to click for sure.
When you come out here, get into the pads again, it's probably the first time, this is your third padded practice.
Right.
First time you've been in pads in a long time.
Yeah, for real.
And you're a physical guy. You enjoy that part
Most
of the game.
definitely.
Was it fun to get those pads on? And this is your first back-to-back days of, like, really playing some football.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to get into the rhythm of finally having pads on again and finally being able to hit a guy instead of having to just walk through what you're going to do. Like, it's actually fun to finally get to feel like how their punches are, how their sets are, and things like that.
Because the last time you had pads on before this, right, you were the MVP of the Senior Bowl if I'm not mistaken, right?
I guess you could say that.
I guess you could say that. So listen, who needs a nickname when you have the hardware?
Well,
right?
but let me ask you that. Obviously, the interior of the defensive line here, there's some great opportunity for some guys to make noise.
Right.
How do you make noise when you're not actually getting the tackle to the ground?
Right.
What's the key?
I feel like just being disruptive in your own way. I mean, all of 11 of us have a job, so I feel like just doing your job to the best of your ability, and the plays will begin to find you if you're constantly doing your job and consistently doing what you need to do every play.
And where's the comfort level right now in understanding the playbook and being able to play fast and not think?
Right. I feel like I'm getting more comfortable. I feel like I know the playbook because we've gotten everything installed now, so now I know the playbook. So now I got to begin to learn what to do on those certain plays and, like, get the details down and what footwork to take and stuff like that. But I'll say I'm getting very comfortable.
At Oklahoma, you're playing a lot of 0 or
right.
even 1 tech. Now you get to play a 3 tech, which you did in the Senior Bowl,
yeah.
and I know you are liking that.
Right.
How has that been different for you, and how much are you enjoying? Because it looked like even today we saw some twists and some stunts a little bit, getting into some fun stuff.
It's definitely fun, for surely. I just feel like I have to get back into the footwork of learning my steps and stuff like that because I've been playing nose for so long that I feel like I still do things that a nose would do. So it's just getting back into the rhythm of playing the position that I love.
When you talk about getting back into those steps, I'm sorry, Nathan, the group is so young. So who's helping?
95. And 90, of course. Like, they don't take no days off of telling me what I did wrong or what I did right. And, of course, Coach Kiffin, they all hold me accountable and just telling me what I need to hear, knowing that it doesn't bother me.
So when Miles corrects you, do you just bark back at him?
I be barking in the meeting room, but for good reasons. I don't bark back at Miles because obviously one day I'm trying to be the type of player that he is in this league. So he knows what he's doing and he's doing something right. So everything that he tells me, I listen to. Because I haven't seen him be blocked once this whole training camp.
No, he can be a little disruptive. At times it's like, all right, we're trying to run a practice here. We're trying to run some plays.
Exactly.
Can you relax a second? They both like you, though, and I know that you know that. I mean, the first day that Jadeveon Clowney was back here with the Browns, I interviewed him, and he brought you up in that interview. So when you have two guys like that, they obviously see something in you. Does that make you want to get after it even more? Because they care. If they didn't care, they'd say, okay, here's a rookie, whatever, do your thing. We're great. We don't need to worry about it.
It makes me definitely go harder. Like, after our walkthrough, I go in and get an hour of stretching. I'm recovering, doing everything that I need to be to make sure that I stay on the field because I'm trying to be dominant just like them. So I'm doing all the little things, watching film at home, constantly taking notes, constantly asking people around me, like Gerald McCoy, asking him every day, what can I do better on this? What can I do better on that? Just asking people around me, what can I do to just be consistently a better player?
You just mentioned Gerald McCoy.
Right.
Talk to us about that relationship, and what does that mean? You're talking to Gerald McCoy. What can I be doing better every day?
Real talk. I appreciate him the long way. 6-time Pro Bowler, one of the best D tackles, in my opinion, to ever do it. So being able to send him my practice film every day, and he's constantly coaching me on, here's what you need to do on this, or here's what you need to do on that, and then I come back to the practice field, and the things that he's telling me are actually starting to work. It's a blessing to have him on my side.
But how did that even start? Tell everybody, what is the relationship? Why is he helping you?
I mean, we have a great relationship. OU mostly, but when I went to train at Exos, he was there with me as well, training, try to get back right, and we started talking there. And
just hit it off?
Yeah, and then he texted me a couple of days ago, like, how's camp? Told him some of the issues that I was having. He told me to send him the film. I sent him like 15 clips. He replied to all 15 clips, like different things to do on each one. And then after that, I came back on the practice field and those things started to click. And then the next day, he asked me how was practice. I was like, you're not lying. Like, those things that you were telling me, they were right. He was like, I'm not a 6-time Pro Bowler for no reason. And then he just kept asking for clips. Like, so I guess he actually falls in love with, like, trying to help people younger than him.
It's awesome.
And is he seeing it? Is he telling you, yes, that is better, that is improvement?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but you still, so every day you're sending him clips?
Every day. You can never get too good. I'm just trying to be a better person than I was yesterday.
So then tell us about Miles. Miles obviously is playing end, and his main goal is to rush the passer. The Browns need you to make sure to stop the run. Why is Miles so useful to you?
Because he's a great pass rusher and a great run stopper, in my opinion. I feel like he always is in the right position, always is using his hands the right way. He has great technique, and he's consistent in using his technique. So just being around a guy that is constantly using their technique and doing what they need to do and constantly being in the right positions all the time, I feel like it's a blessing to have him around. And then Jadeveon, like, he takes no days off. and telling me what I did wrong, and like he feels like it
Is he
bothers me.
right? Is he
Yeah,
right as much as
he's
Joe?
right most of the time.
They
so.
see a lot of potential in you. You know what I mean?
Real
They
talk.
see the potential,
Right.
and that's an exciting thing. And
Real talk.
Miles also probably saying, "Listen, if you can get to the quarterback too, one less person that's worried about me on the way there." And you guys ran some games today. It looked like I feel like I saw a couple twists out there.
Yeah,
and you got to work together.
Funner. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funner when you get to work with guys like that, and you just know that they're unguardable. So you know if you do what you need to do, that the stunt is going to work the way it needs to be.
All right, we know the back end talks.
Right.
We know that Newsom likes to chirp. We know
That's my guy.
Okay,
I
so
love Greg.
who on the front end chirps?
I don't really hear anybody for real. Jacques a little bit, but I feel like it's starting to be me. I'm starting to get more comfortable in the system and starting to get more comfortable around the guys and more comfortable running the plays. So, like, when I feel like I'm to a point of consistency, then that's where my mouth will be a little larger. But like I said in the earlier interviews, I'm just trying to be less heard and more seen.
What about Coach Woods? Does Coach Woods like to tell you to speak up, or does he say,
I don't
hey,
feel like
Rook?
he tells me to speak up. He just tells me to, like, be a better player than I was the next day. Just focus on the consistency aspect of the game, not so much the barking aspect, because we are all bite, no bark. So
That's right.
All right, let's move forward to Jacksonville, right?
Yes.
Friday. Tell us about that. What are your thoughts
Right.
as you head into that game, and how much are you hoping to play?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited for sure. Excited to just get out there and go against another team and get to hit another team and don't have to take it easy because they don't have one in the same uniform as us. So we can go all out and do anything that we need to do to get to the passer. So I'm just excited to go out there with my guys and finally get one under the belt.
Will we see a different Perrion Winfrey when you can actually hit?
I would guess you might have to wait and see it.
Just ask the guy from Iowa State. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, before we let him go, can we get a scouting report on the other side? Earlier, Nathan and I were talking about Nick Harris.
Right.
We've seen him practice for years, but he's really only had the one game to play.
Right.
What are you seeing out of him?
Definitely a consistent player. He has the guys like Joel and Wyatt around him and Jack on the outside, so I feel like they're molding him into the player that he needs to be. He's tough, short, so he's able to be quicker, more center of gravity, so he's able to knock guys off the ball and knock guys out of the gap. So I feel like he's coming along and definitely becoming if he continues to work, he can be one of the best centers in his league.
All right, and are you enjoying going against Nick Chubb?
Yeah, most definitely.
He's a big, strong guy. You know, it's wild for you, though, right? You have Gerald McCoy who's watching your tape, and we had Joe Thomas was out here earlier going through things with Jed Wills, so somebody who's done it at a high level, and that's pretty cool. But you also go against Joel and against Wyatt, two guys who are, Pro Bowlers, all pros.
Right.
And I'm sure there are times when Joel's like, oh, I thought you were going to do this, or, oh, maybe you should have done this, to get kind of that feedback not only from a guy like Gerald McCoy, who's six-time Pro Bowler, playing the position you play, but the guy who's supposed to stop the position you play. Has that been kind of wild, just the amount of information and seeing kind of from Joel's perspective, all the things he knows about what your job is?
Right. It's definitely exciting that I have those guys around me because they don't have to help me. They don't have to tell me the things that I'm doing wrong, but they're just such great veterans and great guys in the locker room so that they're able to tell me, like, you're doing this on this or you're doing that on that, because obviously it's going to get to the point where we're Browns on Browns, so they're just trying to make me the best player that I can be.
All right, Perrion, tell us something that
You're
Browns
a dog.
fans don't know about you yet. Tell us
I don't know what
something.
I'll add. Here's something. Are you eating your steaks medium rare yet? Have you tried it out after the last time we
no,
talked?
I would never try that.
Come on, Perrion.
Only
Oh,
medium
really?
rare I'll
So
eat is a Wagyu.
So,
The Wagyu.
Really?
Yeah.
all right, well, tell us something that we don't know.
If you don't know, you will soon.
All right, bark. No, you can't leave until you bark. Give us one good bark to send us all off.
That is it.
Perrion, thank you so much. We appreciate it. It was wonderful to meet you. And everybody, that is another episode of Browns Live. We'll be back in a couple days.